Scotty P, Thailand Summit. Today we're going to talk about financial independence, self-made millionaires, lessons learned, where did you come from, how did you do it, what obstacles did you overcome, what advice you might share. Me personally, coming from less than zero, made every possible mistake humanly possible.
Just like it has a microphone right in there.
And I feel that one of the things that really resonated with me, my mindset was always, even when I was completely broke, was I'm going to get there. Financially, I'm going to get there. And my golden objective for countless years was to become a self-made millionaire. And just by a show of hands, how many of you would like to make $1 million in the next 12 months? And now feel free to shout this out if you have an answer, but how much money on average do you have to make a day to get there? Anyone?
About $3,000.
Good. Most people don't have an answer, but he's right. Jack it's $2,740. Now I knew how to make $75 a day, $150 a day, $250 a day, but my mindset was, how do I get to making $2,740 a day to get to the promised land? And we're just talking finances. So what you think about, you bring about. And fortunately, I got there, even though I overcame not one but two divorces, child support, alimony, not one foreclosure but two. I call them respectfully strategic defaults. But that's why I say no one has made more mistakes than me. It's the old adage, the more you fail, the more you succeed. And when I look around, all of you are in great shape because most of you have youth on your side. I mentioned off mic a couple of days ago that Warren Buffett, 91 years old, one of the top 5 richest guys on the planet, his words, not mine, that he would rather be broke and 25. Because most of you have your whole lives in front of you. So the idea here is, for me, there was something that resonated with me that I'll share, and then I'll pass it along to a couple, 3, 4 other people. Anyone who wants to share that's financially independent and or millionaire plus status. I've read and I've lived it, and I believe firmly that your network will determine your net worth. I proactively went out of my way to hang with people that were smarter than me. Wasn't that hard. To find people that were more successful than me, not that hard. And to find people who had more money than me. And I simply was a sponge and retained. Success leaves clues. People that are very successful, their favorite topic oftentimes is themselves. They want to talk about themselves. And I would just ask them, where did they come from, then, now, and how? Where are you now? How did you get here? Where are you going? And I read constantly. And the late, great Jim Rohn has said that you change your life by 2 things: the people that you meet and the books that you read. And I find this to be applicable as well. Everything counts. Declutter. Track every single thing that you spend. I know some people will say that you want to live below your means. Fuck that. How much fun is that? What's the point of busting it and having money if you have to live below your means? To me, and it's not about money, and I say that sincerely. It's about having a great lifestyle. It's about being able to travel the world 6 months out of the year. And to me, I read and I followed this. 70% of all millionaires have one thing in common. Anyone care to take a guess? 70% of all millionaires have one thing in common. They own their own business. Now we know that 4 out of 5 businesses fail, 9 out of 10 fail, but people lie, numbers don't. If 70% of all business owners, if 70% of all millionaires are business owners, it's because tax laws favor business owners. It doesn't mean that if you own a business, you're going to be a millionaire. The example that I read and then I applied it was, as an example, if you're going to go from Houston, Texas to LA, and you own your own business and you want to get to millionaire status, it's the difference between walking from Houston to LA and flying. So that resonated with me. I have a business legally, honorably, ethically, an LLC, S Corp. And the reason is because tax laws favor business owners. So I want you to think long and hard about that. If you're an employee, you are right where the government wants you because you are going to pay the highest in taxes. In fact, let's just say that you make $10,000 for 1 month. You get your check and it's for $6,000. You don't even see the other $4,000. And of the remaining $6,000, you have to pay your mortgage, your car payment, your insurance, this, that, the other. Conversely, as a quick example, and then I'll keep it moving. If you have a company and you can run your business through your house, home office, and your business is set up legally, and you bring in $10,000. Well, out of that $10,000, you can use that same money for your mortgage payment, your car payment, your insurance, your phone, your travel, your meals, your gas. Bada bing, bada boom. The next thing you know, you only have 15. You've spent $8,500 of the $10,000. You're only taxed on the remaining $1,500, roughly 20% tax. So I want you to think about that. To this author's point, who said 70% of millionaires own their own business. During the pandemic, I had some downtime, like most of us, and I was forced to do some soul searching, and I was thinking about how can I make more and do less? And then I thought, hey, you know what? Everything counts. You don't learn about money in school. I didn't learn dick about money in college. There's a reason for that. They want to keep you dumb. They want to keep you a sheep. Okay, just be compliant. Just play by the rules. And I'm not saying don't play by the rules, but it's your God-given right to. It's applicable to anything else in life. He with the most information has an unfair advantage in life. In my case, I thought, okay, how can I do more? How can I do less and make more? And the first thing I discovered was I'm paying $250 a month for 2 storage units. It's $3,000 a year. 10 years, that's $30,000, pissing money away. So I went and I donated it all to Goodwill. I've learned that oftentimes if you own things, they end up owning you. And in my late 50s now, I've learned that even after you pay off your house, you don't own the house. There's a thing called property tax. $6,000 a year in property tax. That's $500 a month. Try not paying it. Okay, they'll take your house. So my point is to just what you bring about, what you think about, you bring about. And it's absolutely true. My focus has been on financially getting to be financially independent, and I got there. And I say it with an asterisk because the bad news is I was making very good money. I've kind of neglected my health. But I'm going to tap into the same mindset. Now, I'm also aware that once you make your first million, statistics clearly show that oftentimes you'll lose it. Well, I'm very guarded. I busted ass I didn't make it to lose it. So far, so good. My goal and objective is how do I get to multi-millionaire status, 2-3 million. And yet I'm sensitive to it because it's not about money. None of us are getting out of this alive. It's about enjoying life. And my personal opinion is when I talk about trimming the fat, don't spend money foolishly. And I love women, but they are cash cows, all right? Think about all the money that you've spent trying to get laid. Online dating, dinners, drinks, vacations, Valentine's Day, holidays. It's never ending, okay? It's a 100% financial loss. So between storage units and ladies, we all love the ladies, but believe you me, they respect you more. The less you spend, the more they respect you. And if they don't, fuck them. Now, when it comes to tax laws favoring business owners, use that to your advantage. The one last thing I'm going to share before I pass it along is years ago, I went to a high-end business networking luncheon, and there was a gentleman there who was a celebrity who is worth a lot of money. Now, this was years ago, and he ran for vice president on the Libertarian Party back in 2008. Whenever Trump would come to town, this guy would intro him. And after he spoke, he opened it up for Q&A, and it's amazing to me the brain-dead questions people will ask someone who's obviously successful. But when they got to me, I simply asked him, hey, based on your life experience, if you could narrow it down to just one concrete message that you would share, what bit of advice would you share? And he really thought about it. And this is what he said. First of all, do you want to hear this? You're like me. I was curious. He said, perfect the skill of sales. Changed my life. Perfect the skill of sales. And he said that people would come up to him and say, oh, I'm above sales. And he would say, that's why you don't have any money. Oh, I'm too good for sales. That's why you don't have any money. Oh, I have a fear of rejection. That's why you don't have any money. And then he said, I made $175 million in sales. So this morning, before breakfast, I was thinking, okay, I wonder what this guy's net worth is today, because I know what he said, 175 million he made in sales, and so I Googled it, and his net worth is 5 million. And to Jack's point, there are a lot of false prophets out there, so you always want to do your due diligence. Now, I'm glad I didn't know his net worth was only 5 million after he bragged about making 175 million, because the fact of the matter is he changed my life. I believed him when he said, perfect the skill of sales. And I did. I love it because there's no discrimination. Doesn't matter if you're old, young, fat, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. It's a commission job. And to be in the top 1% of salespeople in the world, I love it because if you look at your check and you're disappointed, there's only one person to blame. It's you. It's strictly performance driven. What is the best way to get someone to do something?
Convince them it's their idea.
That's good. Convince them that it's their idea. I like it.
Get their trust.
Get their trust. Another good answer. People want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. But the best way to get anyone to do anything, they need to do it. It's in their best interest to do it. Doesn't mean dick, unless they want to do it. Your job, create the want, create the chase. How do you create the want? How do you create the chase? Whether you're picking up women or you're selling a client, it's way better for them to be chasing you than you to be chasing them. And just as I'm talking, I'm reminded, I don't watch TV, but years ago I was watching something. I think it was Johnny Carson or David Letterman, or maybe it was Jay Leno. They had the world's greatest salesperson on there. And the host said, so you're the world's greatest salesperson? And the guy says, well, that's what I hear. He said, well, would you be willing to sell me? The guy said, sure. He said, well, go ahead. And he simply said, well, what do you want to buy? Think about that. It's the same way with dealing with ladies. Only deal with ladies that have high interest. Why the fuck are you going to chase something that they make up their mind sooner than later, within 30 seconds if you're a potential candidate to sleep with? Only deal with high interest ladies. Forget everyone else. But even the high interest ladies, don't buy them a drink. Don't buy them dinner. Why would you do that? Respect your money. And in sales, only deal with high interest people. Fear of loss. Forget features and benefits. Forget this is in your best interest, because you're going to smile and nod and agree with me, but it's not going to motivate you to do anything. But if you fall in love with the product, whether it's tangible or intangible, you fall in love with the product, and you want it. But you take it away. It's not available. Sorry, it's gone. Well, it is available, but you have to wait 2 weeks and you have to pay retail. You could have had it 2 weeks ago for 50% off. Again, that creates the chase. That creates the want. They're chasing you instead of you chasing them. The best way to get someone to do something, they must want to do it. So to recap, trim the fat. Monitor what you're spending. Forget Susie Orman. Forget Dave Ramsey. 1998, a book that I like, that I read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. He's counterintuitive, but he's awesome. I'll give you a quick example. I could give you 20, but in fairness to time, I'll give you one. So let's just say, 2 rules I've learned about money. One, if you find yourself in a financial hole, stop digging. Number 2, it's never what something costs. What is the return? ROI. Spelled just the way it sounds, return on investment. So as an example, the Susie Ormans and the Dave Ramseys of the world appeal to the masses. And the masses are not all that educated. So if you have credit card debt, everyone says, and everyone's wrong, that you should attack the highest interest rate first and attack it. So you've got all this debt and you have no assets. And you're going to focus on the debt. And you're going to pay as much as you possibly can. No, you don't do that. In fact, you pay the bare bones minimum. But you stop digging. You stop using your credit card. And you pay the bare bones minimum. And you focus on what's really important, the asset column. Build your assets to where it shoots right past your debt. And you wipe it out. And you still have assets. The problem is most people do just the opposite. They focus on the debt. Their assets are here. Their debt is here. They bring the debt all the way down. Congrats, it's paid off. But you don't have anything. Your assets are still here. So again, 2 things. One, if you find yourself in a financial hole, stop digging. Monitor where your money's going. Trim the fat. And it's never what something costs. It's what is the return. And personally, I have some health issues, so I speak to you personally. Take care of your health, because what's the point of having the money if you aren't going to be around? I'm going to pass it over to my friend Jack to teach, train, and explain. Oh, one last thing. This is great. 2 of the top 5 richest guys on the planet, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, Washington State, having lunch. There's only 2,600 billionaires on the planet. They're 2 of the top 5 richest guys on the planet having lunch. And a stranger walked up and said, hey, don't mean to interrupt, but I know that you guys are 2 of the top 5 richest guys on the planet. What would you attribute your success to? They both uttered the same one-word response at the same time. Do you want to know what it is?
Sure.
What would you guess was the one-word response?
I think I know the story.
Go.
I pass it on, I know the story.
Okay. Anyone else?
Persistent.
You thought you knew the story. It's a good answer. Persistence. No. Focus. You did know. Yes, it was somebody else who said persistence. And persistence is great, but the gentleman said focus. He's 110% right. So wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, if you have the focus. Hey, not my words. 2 of the top 5 richest guys on the planet both said it at the same time. Focus. How cool is that? All right, Jack, you're up.
All right. Hey, everyone. So I thanks for that, Scotty. First thing I'll just say, I definitely agree about health. I think health is the best investment you can make. And as I used to really try to save money. I'll talk about a bunch of other stuff. I used to really try to save money by eating cheap food and not going to the expensive gym. And now I budget $10,000 a year on health, and I just try to spend it as basically pretty liberally as I can. because it's just, you don't get that time back. And I'm buying years in the future that I get back. So a little bit on my background. I came from a fairly middle-class family, very well educated, but didn't have very much money. They gave me a great education. They actually gave me a really negative education on money. My parents used to say, oh, that guy has more money than he knows what to do with. And I remember as a kid, I'd be like, that sounds like a great problem. But they were very, very unhappy when people had a big house or had a nice car or anything, and they just always talked down on it. That actually kept me down for a really long time. So yeah, it's like a meta point that I'll get into. One of the best things I learned over the last couple of years about money is you want to play wealth games, not status games. And a lot of people in America play status games. So they put down the rich, or they try to read, like it's changing a little bit. They try to watch the best show so they can talk about it, or they try to do things to impress other people. And people who are actually accumulating a lot of money from zero don't play those games. They play wealth games. So a lot of people will say, like, I don't know how to make a lot of money. And it's like, bullshit. You know exactly, like, go out. If you think you don't know how to make money, write a list of 100 things on paper, like with a pen, on how you could make money, how you could make $1 million in the next year, and then circle the 5 that are the easiest and go do those things. Because the chances are, and a lot of the times you're just not doing it because it's like a low status job. Like, you could make a lot, like, one of the things, I have followed a different path in life, but I know so many people who've made really good money in real estate who came from basically nothing, that it's a decent, like, look at the careers where the people are making a lot of money doing things like that is a great place to start. So to talk about myself a bit, came from middle-class family, worked really, really hard to get a job in Silicon Valley, ended up in Silicon Valley, spent a little more than a decade there. I've had meaningful interactions with 4 or 5 billionaires, probably more now, actually, depending on, what goes on. Really close friends with a couple of them. I will tell you, money is not going to make you happy. I mean, one of the billionaires I know, and when he became a billionaire, we were texting, he's like, I'm a billionaire now. I was like, that's awesome, man. That's like amazing. He's like, yeah, no one else cares. And he was so unhappy because he'd went to get, like, the main reason he'd fought, because once you have like $50 million or whatever amount of money, it's not really going to change your life at all. Depending on how we could talk about that for hours, but people at that point, they're playing to impress their friends because their friends have a lot of money. And so the money's not going to make you happy. I know people who make 50 grand money does help a lot to make you happier. It's bullshit to say you don't need to make more than 70 grand, but it won't be the only thing. Another thing to think about is you're not going to make a lot of money working. Like, no matter how much money you make working for someone else, your lifestyle will typically inflate to the point where you're not going to... it's just very hard to save your way to wealth. And I sort of followed this Suze Orman, Dave Ramsey thing for a long time. But if you save $5 walking across town to get a cheaper coffee, think about how much money you could have made during that time. So what else? So I'm a big fan of reading. I'm not going to be able to get a whole bunch of stuff across. The best book I've ever read on making money is this book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. You can actually read the whole thing online for free, or you can buy it on the Kindle and read it. But Naval is a guy who he was born in India, grew up really poor in New York, made at least $100 million, and then just kind of stopped because he got bored and he does other shit now. Really fascinating guy, gives away all this knowledge for free. And he has a very clear plan on Twitter. If you go to his Twitter account, which is just Naval, it's called How to Get Rich Without Being Lucky. And he talks about everything he figured out on how to make a bunch of money really quickly. He has a bunch of heuristics he follows. He values his time really high. So he values his time at $5,000 an hour. And he started doing that in college. And so he'd buy something from Amazon, and if he didn't like it, he would just donate it. he decided, I'm going to stop doing all these like tiny little nickel and diming things people do to save time. And if you want to get rich, you got to really focus hard on making a lot of money. So that is a good book to read. The lessons I have learned, the biggest one I wrote down was look at what self-made people do. So I used to spend a lot of time looking at friends who had a lot of money. And then later on, I realized that guy was born with like a massive head start. Like for me, when I graduated college, my parents paid for college, but then I graduated college and I had no money. And then I started my first job and they didn't pay me for a couple of weeks. And so there was a period of about a month where I was $5,000 in the hole and had a job that was theoretically going to pay me. I never really got much more than like $5,000 in debt. But I was very uncomfortable and just sat down and read a ton of books on like everything I could find on how to make money, how to save money. Worked really hard to make my first like 50 or 70 grand. And then I made 70 grand. It seemed like 70,000 in my bank account. It seemed like more money than I'd ever had. Went and traveled around the world. Had 18,000. So I track my net worth. I think is a very, like, a lot of people use apps to track their net worth. I don't favor that. I think you should just use a spreadsheet. People use like Personal Capital or Quicken or something, but those things will change over time, and you want to have records that go as far back as you can. So every month, I'm a little less disciplined about it now because I don't like it, but for a long time, very helpful. I have a spreadsheet. There's just the date and then every account and how much money is in that account. And then everything I own that's like a fairly substantial asset, like a car or like a guitar or a camera, and I just add up the value of everything. And I just track it and like have a record that I record of like, this is exactly how much I have in all of my accounts, and I can watch it progressing or watch it. It's sort of a moment of reckoning, like coming to justice on it. Track your net worth. I kind of lost that. What was the major point I was making? Does anyone know?
Read a ton of books.
Read a ton of books. So I went from 18,000 to 1.6 million in about 6 years. Then the moment that was very clarifying for me. So I had a high-paying Silicon Valley job. When I left Silicon Valley most recently, there's a little more details in my life here, but I had a job fairly recently that was making me $500,000 a year, cash plus equity. And I ended up leaving it because I was miserable, which was a great decision, changed my life, did a bunch of other stuff. But I had a moment where my net worth was not that high, and I really wanted to stop working and become financially independent. And so I made a trap for myself, basically, where I wrote down what's the one criteria where if I had this criteria, I would solve like the vast majority of the problems in my life. And what I wrote down was I want to have $2.5 million, and I want to make $500 an hour whenever I work. And I set a date. So a lot of people will say like in a year, don't say in a year, say like on March 27th of this year. And like say that in the thing. Don't say it. 1 year is always 1 year away. But if you put a date on it, you like the pressure immediately comes on. So I wrote out a sentence of what exactly I wanted, like the criteria I wanted to have in a year. And then I walked around the neighborhood every morning for like 30 minutes repeating that sentence out loud. And then I would come home and break out into a sweat because I felt like a liar. I was like, fuck, I have no plan to make this much. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. But I've like built this enormous cognitive dissonance in my brain. And then I would just journal. And I was like, well, shit, I have to make this money. How am I going to make this money? So a lot of people I made the vast majority of my money in crypto. A lot of people would say, oh, you got lucky. But it was actually very systematic. I decided how much money I wanted to make. I decided when I wanted to make it. And then I was searching through all the things I knew that could make me money in a year. And it was just very clear that Bitcoin was a great solution to that problem. Like this was before the big bull run kicked off. I started researching a whole bunch. And I basically YOLO'd my entire net worth into Bitcoin in like early 2020 or something like that. And it went up by a massive factor, and then I've rediversified it around a little bit. But the biggest thing is you got to have a plan. There's a good book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about the guys who make a ton of money have a plan. This is a theme that comes up a lot. It's also a theme in a book by Peter Thiel and Blake Masters called 0 to 1. They're called Definite Optimism, which is like you're going to pick, you need to actually say like, this is what I want and here's when I'm going to have it. You can't just kind of bumble through life saying, oh, I hope things will get better. I hope things will get better. And like kind of, you have to like pick a very aggressive plan. And if you pick a very aggressive plan, you'll find shortcuts really quickly. So I'm in a phase now where like I'm pretty sure, I'm kind of taking a breather because I've done a lot of this kind of stuff over the last couple of years. But I'm pretty sure if I picked a goal and actually really committed to it, I could hit almost any goal I want within 10 years. And I'm just kind of patiently holding my, taking some breathers and chilling a bit to like figure out what do I actually want to go at really hard over the next 10 years. See if there's anything else I wrote down here. You got to learn a lot of tricks. You got to like definitely look at what people do, not what they tell you they do. A lot of people will tell you, that they got rich because of this or they got rich because of that, but you have to actually watch how they behave and what they're doing, and they're not even aware of it most of the time. They're not actually aware of like what's making them really successful, and they can't actually tell you because they don't know. Take asymmetric bets. So like the Bitcoin bet was actually a pretty good asymmetric bet because it's like Bitcoin's been at X dollars for a really long time. Like sure, it could go to zero, but it's really unlikely. And the upside is infinite. And so you want to find those bets where, if you read about Richard Branson, for example, he does this all the time. He when he started his airline, he rented a plane for like $10 million with the agreement that he could give it back to them and get like most of the money back. And then he started the airline. And so he capped his downside at like $2 million, and then he like started an entire airline off of it. And you want to find ways, Ray Dalio, a bunch of people talk about this. You want to find ways where you know, heads I win big, tails I lose a little bit of money. And if you can find 5 or 10 of those, like just always be looking for those opportunities. Education's a good one, right? Like if you get really educated, maybe you get a great job, at least you got an education out of it. But find opportunities where something's substantially mispriced. One more thing, I think this is a thing Paul's talked about. You want to figure out where there's a lot of money. Like you're not going to get rich in a place where there's not a lot of money. And so I really got into photography for a long time. And then as I got really good, I have friends who work for National Geographic. I have like all this sort of shit. But the 100th best photographer in the world almost certainly makes less money than the 10,000th best engineer. And so you don't want to have to be in the, like, if you go just be a fucking engineer and you like be top 5%, you're going to make way more money in a lot of situations than someone who's a photographer or a poet. And so pick a game where there's actually a bunch of money flowing around. And then you just get a little bit of it, and it can make things really easy. Back to Scotty.
Thank you, Jack. Well done. Well said. Boy, he triggered 2 quick things before I pass it on to Cole. He talked about time management. Okay. I don't care how good you are. There's only 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, right? So you can try to get more out of it. You're not going to. But I'm reminded of a doctor. He had a bunch of friends, and on a given Saturday, the doctor's friend said, hey, on Saturday, we're going to be building birdhouses. And then at noon, after working from 8 until noon, we're going to go out into the forest and put these killer birdhouses out as a good deed. And I know we can count on you. Does the doctor say I'm in? Or does he say I don't think so? In or out, the doctor?
Doctor can't go. It's got to work.
The doctor makes $500 an hour. And he said, listen, and on Saturday, he's off. He wants to be golfing. Yeah. So he said, listen, I'm not going to be there, but I'm going to work an extra hour. I'm going to make an extra $500 here. I'm going to hire a carpenter for $250 to make a kick-ass bird feeder. And then when you guys are done at 1 o'clock, the remaining $250, go have beer and pizza on me, but I'm going golfing. Time is money. He valued his time. And so instead of tying up an entire Saturday on his off day building a shitty birdhouse, it's not his expertise, he just worked 1 extra day at the office and donated it. Time management, critically important. The last thing I want to say before I pass it on, because again, Jack triggered something. You know, he mentioned real estate. I'm a big proponent of real estate. If you go to your banker and say, listen, I want $100,000, I have a good feeling on a stock. Exactly. He's going to laugh at you, right? Don't ask me how I know. But imagine if you find a $1.2 million house, but you found a highly motivated seller. Their death, divorce, whatever it might be, and you need 10% down, $100,000. So you need a loan for $900,000, but you go to your banker and say, I need $100,000 on a $1.2 million house that's going to appraise for 1.2, but I only need $900,000 and the $100,000 down. It's the same $100,000 loan. The banker's going to give it to you because he's got leverage. Now, he's not in the business to take back the home, but it goes back to leverage, right? So fast forward a year. let's just say the banker was a reject, and you got lucky, and he gave you $100,000, which would never happen because you have a good feeling on Bitcoin or a stock, and you make a 10% annual return. Congrats, you've netted $10,000. Congrats. That same $100,000 loan that you got from your banker for the $1.2 million house, that appreciated 10%. The same 10%. But 10% of 1.2 million is $120,000 net versus $10,000. So what's better? $120,000, 10%? Or $10,000, 10%? So again, think about what you think about. Success leaves clues. Next, our man Cole is in the house. What up, dog? What up?
Thanks, Scotty P. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I've just written down some notes, and I'll start with a childhood story. I think I was. Oh, good.
Check it's still working. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, it's all good.
Childhood story. I was about 10 years old, and I was in what's called primary school in Australia. You call it elementary school in the US for those not familiar. So 10 years old, and I was standing watching the bus go off to the school camp, and all my mates were on it, and the school camps were the highlight of the year. So I had to watch them drive off in the bus, simply because, for whatever reason, my parents either didn't or claimed to not have the money to send me on the camp. Look, don't get me wrong, my parents did their best, and we always had food, always had a roof over our head, and all that sort of stuff. They sort of, they had their struggles because 4 kids and moving from another country and all that. So we weren't rich, we weren't poor, we were sort of, just a struggling middle class living week to week. And that moment really affected me, because I thought, if I ever have children, this is never going to happen. Like, I'm not going to be in a position where I can't come up with, at the time would have been $20, maybe in today's money might have been $200 or $300 to send one of my kids on a camp. So that experience really impacted me. And then fast forward, many years, I still had issues with self-worth, and that's reflective on how much income that you earn in some ways. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if you're struggling or you earn a certain amount of money, it's tied in with your self-worth and the internal setting that we place on ourselves. And let's say it's 50K, and once you go outside of that, you'll tend to self-sabotage. So let's say you go from 50K, you win the lotto. A lot of people will win the lotto, and within 5 years, I think 90% or more lose all of it, because they haven't gone inside and tinkered with the psychology about money. And that's all it simply is, so that you can change your perspective on yourself and what your actual worth is. And it's one of the ways to measure your worth, is what money that you're earning. So anyway, that story set me on a journey, and it took me a while for that journey to manifest. And the motivation, I was into investing, and I was into real estate and buying, properties, and I made money out of real estate, just got the timing right where I lived. Started in 2000, bought a little flat, 1-bedroom flat. Fast forward, 6 years, it was worth 4 times as much I paid for it. And I ended up selling that and then buying another property, and bought many properties, sold many properties, probably sold more than I should have, and should have kept a lot more. And anyway, that's that story. And that was what motivated me to not live week to week, and to learn how to become rich. And I read a lot of books. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, read all Robert Kiyosaki's books, the Cash Flow Quadrant, the classics like The Richest Man in Babylon. And that's what I encourage people to do, and that will plant the seeds. And even if you read it and think, oh, this is a load of crap, let that information go in there, and sometimes that won't come into fruition until years later, even decades later. And you mentioned that that most people who make money start their own company. And the motivation for me starting a company was actually, funnily enough, getting married and then having children, because I knew I had to provide for them. And that did motivate me to make more money than I needed for myself, which is part of being a man. It's producing more than you actually need to for yourself, so that you can provide for other people. You don't necessarily have to do that in these times, and I'm not recommending you do that. That's a good way to think about it. And what I did was I was just working actually in hospitality for many years after school. I'm a qualified cook or a chef or whatever it may be. I worked as a waiter, worked as a barman. So those lower level paying jobs, I learnt a lot about people though, and I learnt how to deal with people through that. So it wasn't a total waste of time. And it came to a tipping point where I was actually driving fuel tankers for BP because I was in a job in hospitality that I didn't like. So I went and got a job that, in between for a year and end up driving trucks. I mean, most countries in the world, you don't earn much money driving trucks. In Australia, you can do quite well just because of the unions and the way it's structured. So I went on to that and then made some money of that. And during that time, I was buying real estate, not a huge amount, just buying, had an investment property and had a property I lived in, and then would sell that property and then use that money to, buy another property, that sort of thing. And just going to keep on track here. So anyway, so I come to a tipping point where I thought I got to leave this job because I kept, getting my wife at the time pregnant and end up having 5 kids with her. And I thought, look, if I want to provide for them long term, then I can't keep working as an employee. So that's when I decided to leave the safety of going from wage to wage. And I wasn't really living week to week. I always had money in the bank and always had, safety money there in case of emergencies. And I was the type of guy, even when I was younger, my mates wouldn't have money, I would just have money. Might have been that incident that happened in my childhood and how my parents viewed money. I always made sure I had money in the bank, and my mates would never have money. And they'd sort of look at me and go, well, you're lucky because you've got money. It wasn't because I was lucky, it's because I worked and I planned and I saw the reality of how money worked. And I was at a seminar with a friend of mine, and we went and spoke to the gentleman who was running it, and he was quite well known. And the man I was with said to him, have you got a tip for me? And he said, yes, go and get a job where you are on commission only, so that then you are not relying on a wage and you have to make it happen. So I was married and a couple of kids come along. I thought, right, it's time for me to go and start my own business. And I had 2 choices, be a real estate agent or become a mortgage broker. This was probably 15 years ago now. And I spoke to a real estate agent lady who was helping with some, selling real estate that I had and helping me out with different things. And she said, I think you should become a mortgage broker. So that was enough for me just to do that. So I started out as what's called a sole trader, and you were talking about structures and how important they are. And a sole trader is essentially like an employee, but you don't really get many tax breaks. And then the first 2 years of becoming a mortgage broker, and mind you, I had 2 kids at the time and more on the way, I didn't make any money. So I didn't make any money the first year, and I allowed for that, so I made sure I had enough money to take care of business in the background there through various means and methods. And then in the first year I didn't earn any money, I just was learning and soaking up knowledge. And in the second year I replaced my costs, which I think were 20k, and I made 20k in commissions. So this was a very slow start for me. And then in the third year I replaced my wage, and then in the fourth year I doubled my previous wage, and then in the 5th year I quadrupled my previous wage. And that was purely through commissions-based sales only. So I had to get out there and make it happen. And if I didn't make it happen, nothing happened. And it was very difficult. Another question?
One thing I want to say when you're done.
Yeah, okay, so cool. And then it was pretty scary, but I went out there and I eventually made it happen. And through trial and error, I got the clients in, and then got referral sources in, that disappeared. And then I came up with an idea to prospect online. So that's how I built my business. I went onto property forums and I just decided to answer like 5 questions a day for 3 months, and my business exploded through that. And then I could get myself in a position where I could buy more real estate, and then it was time, backtrack a little bit, I had to set up like a company. It's different terminology than the United States, but it's pretty much the same. So it was like a family trust that was trustee for a company, trading as CDR Finance. So that structure allowed me to do exactly what you were saying, to write off a lot of my costs through the business. So instead of getting taxed on 10K, so I can back up what Scotty P was saying, instead of getting taxed on 10K, it was all expenses and only 2K was left, or 3K, and you get taxed on that. So that's a very good point, and it is very good to work out how you can maximize the amount of money you get in through the place that you live, because the laws will be different. So that's a very important point. And also another point that you made was leverage. And the best leverage that I can think of is to buy residential real estate, because you can borrow up to 90% of the property's purchase price, and you have to put in 10% of your own and 5% plus costs. Yeah, so that's how I'm not rich. However, for the last 5 years, I haven't had to work because of the fact that how I got paid in the commission was upfront, and then you get like a residual income. So it was to my benefit not to continue working, because my ex-wife decided to press the nuclear button and blow everything up. I think she thought there was a lot more there than what there was. There was stuff there, but I'd bought assets as well, and income-producing assets. So that's very important as well, and that's primarily in Australia. I think 90% of millionaires or 90% of people who are financially free do it through residential real estate. So, I've got some.
90%.
I think it was 90% in Australia, and I think in Perth, where I'm from, in Western Australia, we've got the highest per capita of millionaires, or we did have, in the world. Yeah. It's through the mining and whatnot and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not. I don't know if that's worldwide, but that's a stat in Australia. 90% of wealthy people in Australia, or millionaires, or however they classify it, is done through real estate. Just on the ramble, I wrote some notes down here. So yeah, I started my business, and that was about 15 years ago. And that's what I encourage people to do, is to look into the laws, like Scotty P mentioned, and see how you can keep the money that you earn. Because if you're an employee, then you're actually carrying the system, and you don't get a lot of breaks. And another point I made was inflation versus assets. So at the moment, we're in like a hyperinflation, or we're in a high inflation in Australia, where I'm not sure the rest of the world, I'm assuming it's the same. Yeah. And then the way you buffet that is by buying assets, such as residential real estate. And then with something else Warren Buffett said, he said your network is your net worth. And that's very important. And getting back to me having a 5-year break, I basically just used that 5 years, to listen to like people like Ronin and others, and to apply that knowledge and learn how to seduce women, which is essentially sales. So it's very much sales. And I have a bit of a natural affinity for sales, and I've read sales books and that sort of thing. So that seemed to a lot of people like a waste of time, but I'm glad I did it, because I sort of got it out the way and learned.
It's not a waste of time.
No, it's not. No way. And I really wanted this information to be around when I was in my 20s, but it just wasn't. So look, there's a huge amount of money that's getting transferred in the ether, right? And we just have to work out how to get in front of it, get ourselves in front of it. So there is lots of money right now flowing between people and bank accounts, and you just have to think and look and see, how can I get my way? How can I get in front of that money, or how can I get in the middle of that money so I can get my cut? And then another thing Robert Kiyosaki says is use other people's money. So you can you use debt to leverage, and a great way to do that is through residential real estate. And then I think you said have a plan. It's good to have a plan. You need a reason why. And mine at the time was family. That's no longer my reason why. I still will provide for them and do the right thing. But my reason now is me and freedom. And I'm 52 now. Retirement age in Australia is 65. I have been set back quite a bit, or a little bit, by the whole divorce thing. It's actually not as bad as it might sound, because instead of being like at a 60% debt to asset value ratio, I just have to reset it to 80 or 90, pay her out, and pretty much just start again, and then just let time go by and take care of it. And then in conclusion,
So you can keep the assets, is what you're saying.
I can, yeah. I just have to refinance them, get my because I wound my income down a little bit. I was talking to Brent about it, and he did something similar, because he had a company as well. Because if I get all this income in, she did the wrong thing, didn't cooperate, then it would all go to her. So yeah, I'm essentially going to be able to keep. I've got a family trust which has got some residential real estate in it, and her lawyer suggested I sell all that, and I was saying no, I want to have a go at keeping it all. So eventually, for 2 hours of conversation, I could have sorted this all out, and it went on for 2 years. She spent 20 grand, I spent 30 grand. Complete waste of time on lawyers. And then I've come back to the very first offer that I made them anyway. So it was all a bit of a game they were playing, I think, just to torture me or to make me give in and do something stupid. So yeah, I'm going to come out all right, and I'm going to keep essentially everything, and there's a chance I may even get the house that she's living in if she can't get refinance it when it comes to the time as well. So I've got a year and a half to come up with a couple of $100K, and if I can possibly keep the properties in the trust, which I want actually for my children, and then I can get the property possibly that she's living in now. If she doesn't get her shit together, she'll just have to leave with a whole bunch of cash and waste all that in rent and stuff like that. So yeah, my business sort of went on the back burner. I managed to keep my business going, which was cranking when she decided to press the button. It was funny, like most men are at their worst financially. I was at my peak financially when she decided to press the button, and I thought, okay, now I can relax and enjoy the fruits of my labour, being like, at the time I thought it was my wife and my children. I can kick back, and that's when she decided to do it all. So it's set me back. The last 5 years I haven't really had to work. And that's because of the choice that I made to start that business, and it was a commission-based business. So entrepreneurship is not for everyone, but there's people in this room that I know that it is for, and perhaps that you haven't thought it's for. And a great way to do it is, okay, I can get a job and in sales and commission only. So it just makes you have a bit of a buffer. And then if you're thinking about that, or this is stirring you up, then I encourage you to go for it and get a job where, you know, your income isn't capped. It's based on like a product or a service that you sell, and then having the skills to present that. And don't pick something that's bullshit. Pick something that you believe in and that genuinely does help people. Don't just pick something that's going to earn you the most money. Pick something that is actually going to help people and that you genuinely believe in, because then that's called integrity. So there's lots of things you can sell, but if it's like shit or it's going to not really help people, then don't do that. Pick something that's going to help people and that you can stand, with your head held high and know that you weren't ripping people off and that you were selling them something good. So I've been set back about 10 years, but I've still got time on my side, and there's people that I work with that know me, and they've got faith in me that I can become quite wealthy one day. And I was on the way to doing that, and unfortunately she just had other plans or was listening to the wrong people. So yeah, between now and the retirement age in Australia is 65, and there's lots of things you can set up where you can get tax-free income, and I've got plans I'm going to set in place. So it's just a matter of, I know what to do, it's just a matter of letting time go by and putting those plans in place. And I'm going to end up not super wealthy, but I'm going to end up where I don't have to worry about money, probably within another 2 or 3 years. And the divorce has been decided on, and we've written it all down, so I just got to give her 2.5K a month, and I've got the potential. I'm on about, I'll be honest, I'm on about 15K a month now income, and I can quickly get that up to 20, 25, 30, and that's simply because I picked a job or a career or a method where I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting an hourly rate, but I just feel there's some people in the room here that have maybe been thinking about that and a little bit apprehensive. Just put the fear aside and go for it. If you get an opportunity presented to you where you can, sell a product or a service and you're earning commission, you can earn several $100,000 a year, then give it a go. For sure.
Can I jump? You done?
Yeah, I'm done, man.
You triggered something. So I just want to talk on some of the stuff you're talking about at the end.
Sure.
And then one thing you triggered, be aware of charlatans. And so
Yes.
I actually was looking, I had this moment in the shower where I was like, shit, all these guys on the internet, they always say they're making X dollars per month and they're going to teach me how. And then I thought about when I was doing sales and the most I made in a month. And I was like, I would just tell people, here's how you make this much a month. And I would pick my highest month, right? Which I think is, so a lot of people just lie about this shit. And so you want to be really, like, anyone who's teaching you how to get rich is generally trying to get rich on their own, off of your back. The other one is measure. So maybe the contrast to thinking about, I made 20 grand a month is like, think about it in terms of years. Try to think of a number you want to make. I think 10 years is a great time frame. And I've done this, what I'm about to tell you, I've done a couple times in my life, which is like, I realize I fucked up and I'm like, okay, I want to reset. I just mentally take time off my age. So I'm like, I'm 30. I feel like I'm not where I want to be at 30. Like, I'm going to pretend I'm 25. And just like, I just start telling myself I'm 25 inside my head and they're like, oh, if I'm 25, then it's like not a big deal to take a job and assist this guy and learn from him because I'm only 25 and I can just like reset. It's not a big deal for me to like take time and just read a whole bunch of books and like stop doing things. And so I'll just reset, pull myself back in age pretty regularly. I just pulled myself back 10 years recently because I was like, oh, like I'm not happy with things. Well, whatever, I'm 10 years younger. Who cares? Like, it's just a number in my head. I definitely am a big fan of mentorship and finding the guys I know who do really well. A lot of the times, if you find a really rich guy, like a really rich guy, they often need a smart guy who just does all the shit for them. And you get to learn everything from them and you get to see what's going on. And they're not going to pay you that well, but they're paying you in this knowledge. Like one of the guys I was talking about is someone I assisted for a really long time. And so I basically can think exactly the same way he can think. We can complete each other's sentences. And so I've got all that knowledge now that's like incredible. You know, he didn't pay me very much when I worked for him, but I learned a lot. And I got normalized to like large amounts of money and understanding what goes on. And then, yeah, if you reset your age 10 years and just eat shit for like 3 years and let things compound, like basically realize it's going to be really painful. Like let's say you had no education and you want to learn how to be a computer engineer, like it's going to suck for like 2 years, but you have to like think about just how it's getting better day by day or month by month, and it compounds really fast. And then the specific thing that Cole triggered was once I hit my financial number, I remember looking at a spreadsheet and it was like I had a goal of I told you the 2.5 million. I didn't hit that, but basically I set a really high goal. I got more than halfway there. Felt really good. But once I crossed 1 million, I remember looking at the spreadsheet and it was like 1,000,1,0, and I was like, oh wow! Like I've been waiting for this number for like 20 years, right? And I finally see it in the spreadsheet, and I felt really good for like 3 days. And then a couple months later, it was like 1.6, and I was making like $40,000 a month of like passive income from these investments I made. I felt really empty. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I was like, shit, I've been waiting a really long time to make all this money, and now I like literally don't have to work anymore. The most depressed I've been in a really long time, because I'd like finally beaten the game. And this happens all the time. Like you hear about like guys who like go to the Super Bowl, especially with the Super Bowl, because I think you can't play that long in the NFL. And then they're just like, well, fuck, what do I do now? Like I did the thing and I'm 35.
How old were you then?
36.
Okay.
So, thankfully, actually like pretty happy because I lost a lot of the money. And so like, I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, it just gave me more hunger, and I actually enjoy having the hunger again. Like I take better care of myself. I'm more focused. I'm like disciplined. I've still got a bunch of assets that are probably going to come. Like I own like a lot of different things that are just really depressed in value right now, but will come back up. But I would say that making money is kind of like joining the mafia, in that like once you make the money, it's pretty hard to walk away from it. And I kind of came to the conclusion, like, I'm just going to go make more money because it's fun. And so I've just set a high, like I'm not chasing the money because I want to spend it on anything. I've already owned most of the nice objects I'd ever want to own. Like I've rented beautiful homes, I've owned Rolexes, I've owned BMWs, I've owned fancy cameras and shit. I often buy those things used and use them for like a year and then sell them. But it's more just like I like the challenge. One of my best friends spent a long time in a monastery, and he was like talking to me. He was really happy there, and he's like, I don't know why I left. And we were talking. He basically left because he like wanted to see what he could do. And so now I'm kind of just in it to see what I can do. But the main thing is like, it's I think you'll find when you get the money, it's not actually what you were looking for. And you may end up, a lot of people end up with a real empty feeling once they get there. Still better to be there than to not be there, but it's not going to solve all the problems. Yeah.
Yes, back to Cole.
Won't take long. I think Ronin did an episode about being black box, and if you start to get money, my advice is to stay black box about it, because all sorts of people will come out of the woodwork. You mentioned charlatans, and everyone, once people sense or know you've got money, they want a piece of it.
And no one's happy for you.
No.
Like I told my parents, I told them, and they were like,
it's cynical.
They just got really resentful.
Yeah.
Like I thought they'd be my dad was giving me grief about something one time, and I was like, dude, I got this much money in the bank. And like the whole relationship changed from then on. And he became very resentful.
My dad did the same thing.
Yeah. People are not happy. Like, it's a thing they tell you, like, they're not happy that you accomplished this big goal. They're just kind of like, yeah, you did that. Good for you. But everyone always assumes that even people think of $1 million as like way more money than it actually is. And they assume like you can, now you can pay for family vacations or whatever. But just you'll be surprised they're not happy for you. They're happy for you, but it's like a pat on the back. Like, oh yeah, good job, great. Like, let's talk about politics. Very brief reward there.
My mum would always say to me, even though I was successful and I told her what I was, she would always say every time I saw her, have you got enough money? And I got to the point where it was like, would you just shut the fuck up and I'll give you my bank account and you can put money in it and stop asking me that question. And another little thing I want to just mention is the second million takes 10% of the effort that the first million took to earn. So your first million is a huge effort, and then the second million, not that I'm in the second million, I'm close to the first million, I'm not in the second million, is 10% of the effort. So at first it's going to be really, really hard and feel like you're pushing shit uphill. Keep pushing, and then, it'll get easy from there. And money doesn't make you happy. It sure makes life more enjoyable, though.
The biggest part of the first million is knowing you can do it.
Yeah, the faith in yourself.
And once you see that you can do it, you're like, oh, that's all it took? You're like, oh, only 20 years of my life? But you're like, that's all it took?
That's all it took.
And it feels a lot. It's just a lot you see. You're like, oh, it's just... Because most people... They grind really hard and then they get really lucky is like generally what happens. Like they find the one thing they hit on and they make a bunch of money really quickly. And you learn a bunch of stuff that like if we could tell you how to make a bunch of money, everyone would have a bunch of money. So you have to actually go figure it out on your own. But once you figure it out on your own, you're going to get stuff in your head that can't be transmitted with words. And you'll be like, oh, it's like I could do that again.
Great points by both Cole and Jack. One thing, Scotty P here again. You really want to put a dollar figure on your time. I heard Jack say his time is valued at $500 an hour. I referenced the doctor who flat out makes $500 an hour. Value and respect your time. It's your greatest asset. I'll give you one quick example and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim. If you are paying your landscaper, your pool guy, your personal assistant, if you're cleaning your own pool or doing your own landscaping and running errands and doing this and doing that you could actually pay someone $10, $20, $30 an hour, pay them, outsource, delegate. Cole, you talked about OPM, other people's money, OPT, other people's time, so you can get on your grind, so you can make the big money, pay someone to do the $10 an hour, $20 an hour, $30 an hour, because your time is worth tenfold that squared.
But I'll just say one thing. I think it's better. Well, I learned this because I had a maid company, and in China we had like 700 maids running around, and they always wanted to make me happy because we were, setting up with their jobs. So then they would come and clean my house for free. And I realized that the main thing was that just having them around is a pain in the ass. And, so it's not just my time cleaning. Them being around is a pain in the ass. So I started to organize my life so I didn't need them. And I didn't need to do it myself. Like this shirt doesn't need to be ironed. So I don't need to pay someone to iron it. So anytime you find yourself paying somebody to do something, take a serious look and say, do I fucking need this? Because those people are a pain in the ass. They often steal from you. You have to organize it. They have feelings. They do shit. You're better off with a robotic house. Get an apartment with no yard. It is a big difference when you don't have nothing. When your life is totally free, people that are paying these people, watch their stress level. Yeah. And you'll be like, okay, there's something to this. Sometimes you have to make little compromises, but to me, it's totally worth it. Yeah.
We're going to turn it over to Tim.
Yo. Okay, so money conversation. So a bit of a background, try and be as short and concise as possible. So age of 14, left home, somewhat professionally surfing. I was getting paid 30 to 50 grand at the age of 15. So I was already surfing around the world at that age, right? So it was a pretty exciting time for me. and the experiences that I had. So fast forward through that period of time to my late teens, early 20s, I started working as a chef. I worked in the mining and construction industry, fly in, fly out. I was doing anything that I could that would allow me to continue surfing, right? And living the life that I wanted to live, which was based around freedom, flexibility in my time, and adventures, right? That was the most important thing to me, and it still is today, right? I don't really give a fuck about too much outside of, friends, family, and accumulating great memories and experiences. So the foundation of the way that I live today still revolves around those same principles. How can I create the life that I want with the least amount of effort and time while making the most amount of money? So, leading up to my age now, at the age of 37, I operated multiple startups across multiple industries as well over the last 10 to 15 years. Project manager, working in sales, marketing, operations, customer service, whatever it was, I wanted to learn everything. I'm a deep thinker, so I like to apply myself in every aspect of the business, because when I do that, I know that I can be instrumental in every part of, that turning wheel, and then people can't get rid of me too quick because they realize that, fuck, this guy knows too much, or he can be used in every part of the business, whatever that may be. So now, I work in high ticket sales as a contractor. I'm operating a private sales community, so that's been operating for about 6 to 8 months now. We're getting to that next stage of growth. We got a full-time community manager that we've just put into the fold. So what could I tell you guys? I think that how many of you guys right here, right now, want to work remotely? Like, show of hands. What do we got? We got like 80% of the guys here that want to work remotely. So, coming from my experiences, specifically working in sales over the last couple of years, I would say that it is the quickest way to generate the most amount of income with the least amount of time once you've developed the experience, and to have the freedom and flexibility to work from anywhere in the world. So there's kind of two avenues that you could focus on in order to take that pathway. And the first, if you don't have any sales experience, well, you're going to have to develop that. But how do you do that? Well, you've got to get, you got to get into the game, right? So the only way that you could get into remote sales, like fast, is by becoming an appointment setter, right? So an appointment setter, in a nutshell, is just like a glorified, customer service rep, someone that books appointments into a calendar, right, for a high-ticket closer to close deals, right? So as an example, you might be selling, an online coaching program, and it's about, personal development, and that ticket could be a 10 to 20K program. Now, in a nutshell, the benefit of being a part of these starting a career as an appointment setter or a high-ticket closer, again, it's all about performance, right? So you might be able to secure a base wage as a setter, right? So you might be on $1,000 a week, and then you might get paid around 2% of any of the deals that the high-ticket closer closes, right? Whereby the closer, they might be closing deals purely, right? So they might do 4 to 6 calls per day scheduled into that calendar by the setter, and they might be carving off around 8 to 10% per sale, right? So if you're closing deals at around 10K, you might make yourself $1,000 a sale, right? And if you're only doing 4 to 6 calls per day, the benefit for you, right, or wanting to become a setter, developing your skills to end up as a closer, the benefit is simple, is that you're not having to lose too much of your time, but you're making the most amount of money for your time, right? So that's the real value exchange, is right. And as an example, I used to work in the mining industry, and I would burn, 80 to 90 hours per week working in the heavy industry, 50-degree heat in the summertime, 12 to 16 hours a day, right? And I would make about $3,500 in a week after tax, and I would lose all of that time, right? And I'd work away for 4 weeks at a time, and I'd have 1 week off. Now I work remotely. I'm living in Bali. I take around, like I said, max 4 to 6 calls per day, sometimes 8 if you're lucky. And if I close 2 deals, at a 12K ticket at 10%, I've basically made my mining wage off 2 phone calls, and I can close deals in 30 minutes from end to end. So when you talk about leveraging your time, right, I would say that high ticket sales is the key to being able to live the life that you want to live on your terms. And I would almost say that it's more beneficial to some degree than even operating your own business, because you don't have the fucking headaches that an owner operator has, right? Because when you look at a business, what is it that you really have to do, right? You have to manage everything from end to end, right? Marketing, sales, ops, people, HR, all that kind of bullshit, right? Me as a high ticket closer, I can walk in, my calendar's booked, I get on, do what I'm good at, and I walk away. I live my life, right? So who's really winning there, So that's, again, Ronin always states, these things like, have a real good look, observe everything the best you can and identify like where the bottlenecks are, where you want to waste your time, how much energy and effort that you actually want to put into these things for the outcome that you're getting, So, I think, again, one of the biggest things that you have to ask yourself before you even start this journey is, are you the type of person that can handle getting a no more than you're going to get a yes, right? Are you the type of individual that is quite resilient? Can you handle rejection? Because in the world of sales, you're going to get that. You're going to hear no like 95% of the time, right? So it's being able to have the mindset, right, to be able to wake up every day and, if you have a shit week as far as performance the week before or the day before, every day has to be a brand new day in your mind, and you can't allow the negativity of a bad sales day to drip into the next day, because that's where you'll slip and you will fail. And because sales is based on performance, you can't slip, right? Because if you're not performing, like a lot of people can't handle the game because it is pressure sales, right? You have to perform. And if you can't, you don't have a fucking job. You're not going to be making money. But that is the beauty of it, and I love it. I love closing deals. I love talking to people. I'm somewhat introverted, like I also love my own time, but I'm very extroverted as well. So, I would say the key takeaway is ask yourself, like, what is it that you want, right? And I think, Scotty P, you said earlier that, learn sales, because fundamentally sales is life. Everyone's negotiating everything, even when they think they're not, right? Everyone's in sales every day. It's survival, You're constantly negotiating with people and trying to understand what motivates them. And when you can understand what motivates people, you can get whatever the fuck you want in this life. But you can also do it ethically, right? There's another key point is lead with ethics in sales, because you won't last long in the game. Because people will know if you're being a snake. And that's one thing that's really important to me. Like, we're developing a platform to help people get into remote sales. So, like, transparency is key for us. And making sure that people understand that this isn't just about making money. It's about building long-lasting relationships with people, because everyone wins then. You know what I mean? Everyone fucking wins. Like, if you provide value to people, like, you'll develop friendships for life, you know? And you'll make all the money that you need to make. Like, people will fucking happily pay you when they feel that there was a genuine exchange of value, you know? But yeah, I had this one thing I want to finish on. It's like a poem, right? And because I've been at the lowest of lows, like in the entrepreneur, in the journey of like the entrepreneur, and you know, many of you guys here, like, it's life, right? Life beats you ultimately, but you always have to keep getting back up. So there's a poem that I really love, which I want to read, but yeah, it's called "Roll the Dice" by Charles Bukowski, right? Now, yeah, so if you're gonna try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe even your mind. Go all the way. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision, mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are just a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it despite rejection and the worst odds. And it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're gonna... Yeah, to read that last part. Sorry.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, if you get... I can't do it. Sorry.
Where is it?
Just that last part. I'll do it. So yeah, if you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods. Yeah. That part.
And the nights will flame with fire. Do it, do it, do it, do it. All the way, all the way. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is. Yeah. Charles Bukowski.
Great input. Thank you, Tim, for sharing. You can tell he's real, sincere, transparent. Obviously a great salesperson, allows himself to be vulnerable. Something I learned in sales too is to emotionally connect first. Follow it up with logic.
Give a shit.
That's when we're actually talking money.
Yeah, give a shit.
Emotionally connect, followed up with logic. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. The next time you go to McDonald's, I want you to ask to see the owner. He's not there because he has a duplicatable, proven process. He's on the golf course. He's making the big money. Who's making the money? The owner or the workers, right? The owner of McDonald's is never there, but he relies on a proven, duplicatable process. Success leaves clues. I'll let Ronin Man wrap it up.
That's it. That's just good.
All right, I guess not. I guess Scotty P will wrap it up with Cole and Jack and Tim and everyone else. Thank you for being here. We love you all. Thank you.
Yeah.